So glad that you're all here today. And I wanted to give a special shout out to Joyce Roos, whose song you were just listening to. She is the Earth Mama, and we're very, very happy to have you as part of this. And Elaine, did you want to say anything to Joyce?
I just want to welcome everybody, and I'm just so thrilled. I see Elaine Rock is on here also. Hello, Elaine.
Hi, Elaine.
I don't know why I'm not on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Diana.
Okay, good.
Welcome.
This is wonderful. I just want to welcome everybody. I'm really excited. I'm excited about our presenter. I interviewed her on Women's Spaces, and she was just fabulous. And it was just amazing that Joyce Roos agreed to come on. So Joyce, wave so everybody can see who you are. I mean, the song has made national history. I mean, it was chosen as one of the two songs for the centennial, and I believe that right now there's another honor that you're getting on this particular song. Am I correct?
You're muted, Joyce.
She's muted, Joyce.
I don't know, but it sure is an honor to be here with all of you and know the energy you are putting into these continued really important causes. And anytime my music can support this work and lift it up and maybe reach out in other ways, I'm just really thrilled to do that. So I look forward to hearing the new and exciting proposals about how we get this ERA passed.
Amen.
Well, thank you for being Joyce. Thank you for being here, and thank you all. That's all I have to say. I'm just thrilled to see everybody, and that we have a nice group.
Well, and we not only have the president of the San Diego chapter of NOW, but we have our president of the California NOW, Camarina Davidson, who is not on screen. I mean, she's on screen, but where'd she go? Just here. There you are. Camarina, it's an honor to have you on today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we're really, really happy that you could make it. And as people are coming in, we'll just let them pop in. But I want to make sure that you all know who our special guest is, Zakiya Thomas, and I will be pinning her in just a moment. She is, as you know, the president and CEO of the ERA Coalition and the Fund for Women's Equality. And we'll learn all about that. And then we will be doing as long a Q&A as you all have questions for. And then we'll follow up with our board meeting, which you are welcome to stay for, unless you want to go to bed because it's late on the East Coast.
I wanted to say one thing too, that I really wanted to thank Zakiya for being here. It was just such short notice, for everybody. I mean, we just got the word out so fast. I didn't know what hit me. I've been working so hard, and I'm really glad to see everybody here. So thank you so much.
Yes, it really was very quick turnaround. Zakiya appeared on Elaine's radio show 3 weeks ago.
And also the webinar that the National Women's History Project put on August 19th, which is, by the way, is on YouTube. It's called The Time Is Now. The ERA, The Time Is Now. It's a wonderful, wonderful presentation by 5 very powerful women that you don't want to miss.
Yeah, and the recording is out there, as you mentioned, of that. I just don't know where. So if we can find it, we'll pop it in the chat. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Zakiya and have her talk.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. I love the opportunity to talk about the Equal Rights Amendment. It's something that I'm passionate about. I'm sure you are too. And something that's really timely as we look at what's going on in the country right now regarding women's rights, but rights across the board, especially as they pertain to sex equality. First, before I start, I just want to say for anyone who has been affected by the storm and earthquake in California, our thoughts are with you. Being on the West Coast or the East Coast, like we're used to hurricanes over here, but we understand like not everyone's used to that, and it can be scary. So my thoughts are with anyone who's been affected or impacted by those. So as you mentioned, I'm Zakiya Thomas. I'm the president and CEO of the ERA Coalition, the Fund for Women's Equality. We are a movement of movements. with over 290 partner organizations representing 80 million people across this country.
Oh, slow down.
Yay.
I will slow down indeed, yes. So today we are closer than we've ever been to having the Equal Rights Amendment as part of our Constitution. And we're seeing more energy and momentum for the ERA than we've seen in decades. So as most of you know, the Equal
Is
Rights
that
Amendment
right?
it is. The Equal Rights Amendment was introduced 100 years ago. We actually celebrated the 100th anniversary of the introduction of the Equal Rights Amendment into Congress in Seneca Falls last month. A great convening of intergenerational, racial and multi-ethnic, multi-class organizers coming together to celebrate and to commemorate the Equal Rights Amendment, but also to know that this isn't the end. We still have a long way to go, because once the Equal Rights Amendment is in the Constitution, we still have work to do, the work of actually making equality a reality. So 50 years ago, both houses passed the Equal Rights Amendment with bipartisan support and sent the Equal Rights Amendment to the states for ratification. Fast forward to 2020, and the final state needed to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment, my home state of Virginia, ratified the Equal Rights Amendment. And the last step that's needed to actually make the Equal Rights Amendment part of the Constitution is for the archivist to publish it. So we just need to add it to the Constitution. And we've seen more momentum and efforts in Congress as well as on the state level to make that happen. So this session of Congress, we've seen companion bills in both the House and the Senate affirming the Equal Rights Amendment and calling on the archivist to publish. What's new in this effort is we now, for the first time, have women of color leading this effort in the House, and we have the first woman senator leading the effort in the Senate as well. So we have a bill with Ayanna Pressley and Ben Cardin as the leads that are affirming the Equal Rights Amendment as valid and to be published in the Constitution, and one with Cori Bush and Kristen Gillibrand, who are encouraging the archivist to go ahead and publish the Equal Rights Amendment, recognizing that it's been valid and met all requirements to be added to the Constitution. So we have new momentum in Congress. We also, for the first time ever, have an Equal Rights Amendment caucus in Congress. It's actually one of the largest caucuses in the House for any issue area, and we're very proud to have that co-sponsored or co-led by Ayanna Pressley and Cori Bush, with men and women in the House represented on that caucus. We've had the first Senate Judiciary Committee hearing in the last 40 years on the Equal Rights Amendment bill. And we've had the first Senate vote on the floor with 51 senators voting in favor of the Equal Rights Amendment and 47 in opposition. What this means is we now, for the first time in decades, have opponents of equality on the record voting against equality in the Senate. And we're going to hold them accountable.
Mhm.
That's especially in 2024 as those elections are coming up. And we couldn't have done it without Majority Leader Schumer using a procedural move to set us up to possibly have another vote on the bill in this session. Additionally, we're working on the state level with state resolutions affirming the Equal Rights Amendment and also supporting efforts on the state level for state level equal rights amendments. You might have seen that Nevada was the latest state to add an Equal Rights Amendment to their state constitution. We have measures moving forward in Minnesota and in North Carolina and New York. New York's Equal Rights Amendment would be the most advanced equal rights amendment of its kind, expanding equality to groups beyond what we traditionally think of as the baseline for equality in our country, but naming those groups, marginalized groups, in a way that affirms that they are due equal protection under the law. So why do we need this? We need it because the rights that we've relied on for the last 50 years have been rolled back. The Dobbs decision showed that the majority of our Supreme Court views the Constitution in a way as it was written when initially, a time before women and people of color could vote, own land, or otherwise live as free individuals, and when social and legal discrimination prevented many from identifying as queer. The US Constitution was written for and by white landowning men, when most of the rest of us were considered property. And I don't have to tell you this, but women were considered property when the Constitution was written. Yeah. So if we want to see ourselves in it, we have to put ourselves in the Constitution. And that's what the Equal Rights Amendment would do. So it would strengthen our democracy, empower Congress and the states to enact laws that actually protect against discrimination. And it would give everyday people in the courts essential tools to fight back against discriminatory practices. And it would essentially make our Constitution and our laws more fair and equitable for everyone. fixing a step and fixing a system that's been broken for too long for too many people. So it's a crucial tool we need to advance sex equality in our country. And you've seen this. We have over the last century gained enormous, overwhelming public support. Nearly 80% of Americans across both parties support an amendment granting equality for all. But as we've seen the ERA gain momentum and public awareness, our opponents, those who benefit from the status quo and see it as a threat to their way of life, are going on the offense across the country to silence our movement for sex equality. They've done the same for reproductive rights, LGBTQ AI rights, trans rights, most notably, economic justice, voting rights, and the list goes on. I mean, we see book bannings, we see the silence of teachers, prosecuting trans youth and adults, and they don't believe that we should have protections like the Pregnancy Fairness Act or paid family leave. Just like they did 50 years ago, anti-ERA forces are using fear-mongering to sow division and trying to convince the public that the ERA will actually harm women. And they use made-up claims of predators in bathrooms, or forcing a limited view of what makes someone a woman, or simply saying that the laws in our books are sufficient. But we know that if the laws in the books were sufficient, we wouldn't have had the Dobbs decision. The Violence Against Women Act would actually protect survivors of violence. Title IX would be enforced in our schools, and you could actually enforce equal pay for equal work. We have these laws on the book, but they have no teeth now because we don't have a foundation for them in our Constitution. That's what the Equal Rights Amendment would do. But we know better. We've seen their playbook in the past, and we know what they're up to. So each time we make progress, they respond with coordinated attacks. So we have to be ready, especially as we approach the 2024 elections. So that's where we come in. As the ERA Coalition, we bring together this diverse coalition to acknowledge and address issues that address racial, gender, economic, and reproductive justice. And we connect intergenerational and intersectional organizations under one banner, and that's to unite and advance equality. And you all know this, we are stronger when we're together, which is why we as a coalition look at all aspects of equality using the Equal Rights Amendment as the vehicle and the foundation upon which we address equality in our country. And so we as an organization provide legislative experience and expertise. We educate the American public about the need for constitutional equality, and we do so much more, such as share strategies and resources at the state, local, and federal level. And so we're mobilizing millions across this country to unleash a new wave of advocacy, coalition building, and education to make the Equal Rights Amendment and equality a reality. So I know as now you are very action oriented. If you're a NOW member, you're very action oriented. So what can you do? The primary thing you can do is vote. We need to vote for ERA champions and against the opponents in states where in state and federal elections, because we know that right now a lot of our representatives in Congress especially, and also in our state houses, do not represent our interests as voters. They represent special interests, but we need to have them listen to us. There are two things that elected officials listen to: money and votes. We may not have the money of our opposition, but we have the votes, we have the people power, and we need to exercise that to make sure that our voices are heard and that the people who are holding our rights hostage understand that we won't take that anymore. And we will vote them out if they don't vote in our best interest when it comes to legislation that we put forward. So you need to call your member of Congress and let them know that you want the Equal Rights Amendment added to the Constitution as the 20th Amendment. It's that simple. We have a discharge petition pending in the House of Representatives right now. We're looking to get 218 members of Congress to sign on and say we want to move this bill to the floor directly and bypass the committee, to bypass any measures that would stop it from coming up for a vote. We know that the bill would die in committee, so we need to get it to the floor because we have the majority of Congress, of the House of Representatives, supports this measure, and we need them to stand up and say, we want this, we're going to bring it to the floor, and we're going to vote in the affirmative for this measure. That would be huge in a year in which the House of Representatives is actually controlled by the Republican Party. But we have Republicans who support the bill. We only need 5 to sign on to the discharge petition, and we can actually bring this to the floor and actually have the vote we need to move this forward. What else can you do? You can support organizations fighting against inequality. So I would love for you all to support the Equal Rights Amendment and contribute to us, but also contribute your time, your energy, as well as your resources. But there are other organizations that are out there doing the good work too. So think about the issues that you care about and the work that they're doing and invest in them, because we need everyone in this fight to work together to move this Equal Rights Amendment forward and get it over the final hurdle. Because as I said, that's the first step. and equality and enshrining equality in our Constitution. We need to do more than that in the implementation of equality, which is the next step once we have the Equal Rights Amendment added to the Constitution. And make sure that you're supporting each other in this effort. It's very easy for us to get in our silos and to think about, oh, woe is me, there's all this turmoil going on in our country. But there are two things you can actually do to help stymie that. One, you can talk to people who don't have the same point of view as you and just have a conversation without trying to change their mind. That's the key. We have forgotten how to have dialogue without discourse. And we need to get back to that. We need to remember that at the end of the day, what unites us is much stronger than what divides us. We have more in common than what we don't have in common, and focus on that unity. And also support those who are around you who may need that. Uplift each other and move forward. We may disagree on things, but it doesn't matter at the end of the day. If we care about this issue, we have to do whatever it takes, put our differences aside and move forward as a movement, because that's how we're going to make this happen. And as I said at the top, we are closer than we've ever been to having equality recognized in the Constitution in the form of the Equal Rights Amendment. And I thank you for everything that you've done to help get us to this point. And I want to talk with you about how we can continue that effort and any other issues that we have. But right now, I do want to open it up because I find that the most fulfilling part of these conversations is engaging people in ways in which they can actually help move this forward. So with that, Amy, I will open it up to questions if you all have any.
Great. So if those of you who have questions, if you want to put them in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand electronically, if you try and do it by just holding up your hand, that doesn't work as well because we have enough people that it's harder to see all the screens. So we will
I'm on
take
audio.
a call from,
I'd like to ask a question.
Go for it.
Sure, go ahead.
It's sort of a devil's advocate question. I am so for the ERA. But I remember in the 80s when Phyllis Schlafly threw a wrench in the movement back then for the ERA. And the debate was that women are not necessarily the second sex or the lesser, weaker sex, but we are the vulnerable sex. And do women want to be 50% of a road crew, or 50% of a fire line, or 50% of a combat force, or have to be conscripted like an 18-year-old man in the case of a defensive war? These kinds of questions about the vulnerability of women in, these kinds of manly man jobs. What would happen if somebody really tried to push the position and mandate that women are 50% of the heavy lifting, hard labor type danger jobs that men currently are doing?
So what I hear you talking about is this parade of horribles that was predicted by the opposition to the Equal Rights Amendment. Let me caveat this by saying one thing first and foremost. What most people don't realize is that Phyllis Schlafly was a very astute political operative that was very well funded by corporate interests. So it wasn't that she was this homemaker who was just going out there and wooing people. She had millions of dollars in the 70s terms behind her. And we can't negate that. We can't forget that, because though she had a cult of personality around her, she was the figurehead for male interests going back across generations, and that they're recycling those arguments. So I would posit it this way: I don't want anyone to have to go to war. I don't want anyone to be drafted. So I think that we should. So that should not be an issue. We can address that separately. When you talk about the jobs that are open to women, no one's mandating, or men versus women, no one's mandating that you have to take that job. But what we're saying is, if you want to take it, go for it. Why should you be prevented from doing it? But the Equal Rights Amendment doesn't mandate anything. What it does is it allows Congress, the courts, and the people to decide what we should do to address the wrongs that have perpetrated our country and kept our over half of our population oppressed by these notions, by certain portions of the population about what women are, what they're capable of, and what they're not capable of. A lot of the arguments that you look at if you think about the origin of them, it's not true. It's someone's limited view of how the world should be, or their way of seeing how women should be treated differently because it's in their interest. In my personal view, it's not in my interest to be denied the opportunity to have the same job as a man if I can make the same kind of money. That's not in my interest. I should be allowed to do that. If I want to go into a combat zone because that means I can have a higher chance of promotion and I have a longevity in my career in the military, I should be able to do that. But that's my choice. And it should not be prevented or denied to me because someone thinks that I can't do that. They don't know who I am. They don't know what I'm capable of. And they shouldn't be. I don't think our government should be in the business of restricting our rights because of some antiquated notion of what we're capable of, when we can say what we can and can't do. That's up to us. That is, if a man was ever told that he couldn't do something because people didn't think he was capable of it, that would not fly. So why should it fly for women?
Right.
I
So I think
completely.
we just need to reframe the conversation is what I'm getting to.
Well, thank you for that question. And we'll take one now from the chat.
So Anita, I would love for you to expand on what you're asking, because I don't quite understand the question.
Didn't you say it was the 9th Amendment? I mean, didn't you say it? Okay, I got it wrong, but you said it so fast, but there is something affecting the children in the school. When we pass the ERA, the schools are going to change in some way?
No, I didn't say
Title
that.
IX.
You
Yeah,
were
so you're talking about Title
IX.
IX. Oh, okay, Title IX.
Title
Okay.
IX, excuse me.
Yes. No, okay. And I do talk fast. I'm sorry. My
No,
mom
no.
and my grandma are from New York. And so that's what I grew up learning, is how to talk fast.
No, and I'm
So-
slow.
Fine.
So Title IX, the Violence Against Women Act, the Paycheck Fairness Act, all of those are laws that have been passed by Congress, but they have no teeth because there's no foundation for those laws in the Constitution. That's the problem. So we've made great strides with this patchwork of laws that we have. Without that foundation in the Constitution, we can't enforce most of those laws to do the things that they actually need to. Survivors have no recourse. They can't sue someone based on the Violence Against Women Act because they don't have standing because there's not in the Constitution. The same thing happens with paycheck fairness. Like, it's a law, but it's not enforceable. Title IX is also the same thing. If Title IX was actually a thing, we wouldn't have sexual assault on campuses the way we do. It wouldn't be
No?
such discrimination, right?
Why?
Because you can't enforce it. Because schools can go around it because there's no foundation upon which you can sue the organization, the entity that's preventing you from having that right. Because the Constitution, as Justice Scalia said, does not prevent, what did he say? The Constitution does not recognize differences based on sex, but it does not prevent you from discriminating on the basis of sex. So they actually said that there's nothing in the Constitution that protects us based on sex. And that's what the Equal Rights Amendment would do.
And so kids at school the girls can't be protected?
So there are protections that are there, but it's not enforceable to the degree it could be if we had an Equal Rights Amendment.
Oh,
So there are protections in place, but they're not enforceable. That's why we still have, what is it called, the red zone or the red period. It's the first 4 months of a woman's freshman year in college where she's most likely to be raped or sexually assaulted, because the schools don't have anyone to enforce them. Every school is supposed to have a Title IX office, but that doesn't mean they actually do anything.
oh,
Mhm.
So when you're saying we don't have teeth, we don't have the teeth, what do you mean by that exactly? I mean, what does Title IX cover? I mean, just be a little bit simpler. What would the teeth look like?
So for Title IX right now, so there are provisions that say that every school is supposed to have a Title IX dedicated office that's supposed to be resourced, have people staffing it that when there's an issue that comes up that addresses discrimination on the basis of sex, whether it's in sports, education, on those campuses, and mostly we think about higher education as opposed to primary education. If you have a claim and you bring it to your school, it's up to your school to adjudicate it and move it forward. You have no recourse outside of your school. You can't
No.
sue the school for that issue.
because it's.
And so
Mhm.
So the people who are setting the rules are the ones who get to decide whether or not you are able to, have that recourse. Or I know friends who've been harassed, stalked, assaulted, and they go to their school and the school does nothing.
Mhm.
because it's not in their interest to do it. And so who's policing them? But there's no recourse for someone who has to deal with these issues to take it outside of the school to actually have it addressed. Same with the Violence Against Women Act. You can't sue your perpetrator. You can't sue the police department that didn't take your protection order seriously, and then your ex-husband then goes off and kills your kids. Like that, there's no recourse for you. So that's what I mean by no teeth. You don't have the opportunity to use legal recourse to address your issue, to change the system for you and on a systemic level.
How, if the Equal Rights Amendment comes in, how would that affect, say, them taking away Roe versus Wade? I mean, how would that change anything? Would that empower us, or how would that work?
So the Equal Rights Amendment is not a panacea. It will not come in and the next day everything's better. What the Equal Rights Amendment does, it provides a principle and a foundation upon which we can create laws, and we can challenge laws that are on the books and challenge codes that are on the book that actually discriminate against us. And so that's why I say that's the first step, is having it in the Constitution. The next step is for us to actually implement those write those laws and implement them, and actually make sure that they're doing what they need to on the various levels, whether that's the state level or the federal level, using the courts to actually be the arbiter to say, well, yes, no, because now we have standing based on the Constitution, we can then adjudicate this to say that, yes, you have the ability to sue, you can pursue recourse legally for this issue.
Thank you, Elaine. There's a question in the chat from Camarina, who says, is there specific language that we should be using when talking about the ERA?
So a lot of people like to say we need it to be passed. It's already been passed. It's already been ratified. Those are the two main requirements to get added to the Constitution. Is an amendment needs to be passed by both houses of Congress. It needs to be ratified by 3/4 of the states, which is 38 states. The Equal Rights Amendment has met both of those criteria. Now it just needs to be published into the Constitution. So whenever you talk to folks, talk about publishing the Constitution, publishing the Equal Rights Amendment into the Constitution. And also realize one of the arguments that the opposition is using about the Equal Rights Amendment is, even though abortion is very popular across the country, 70+% of the population thinks we should have abortion at some level and access to abortion. The opposition is saying, if you have the Equal Rights Amendment, you will have abortion on demand right away. It's not true. As much as some of us would like for that to be true, it's not true. What needs to happen is that the Equal Rights Amendment empowers the states, empowers Congress to then implement laws that would protect abortion access. So understanding that the Equal Rights Amendment isn't going to make the immediate change that everyone wants, but it is the process by which we make the change that society needs to be more equitable and equal for all of us. And the other side of that is, it's not just for women. I want to be clear. The Equal Rights Amendment says you cannot discriminate on the basis of sex. That includes all types of women, transgender women, cis women. That includes men. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, some of the most famous cases that she brought in terms of the Equal Rights Amendment, she started it by bringing a man who had a claim of paid parental family medical leave. So a man wanted to be able to take time off to take care of his aging parents, but because he's a man, he wasn't allowed to do that. And so she brought his case to the judiciary to say this isn't right, because he knew that if you try to take a man's rights away, the court listens. They don't care about women. But you have to understand that the Equal Rights Amendment is for everyone, which is why we are very staunch supporters of our trans community, of our LGBTQ+ communities, of young people, of women, of anyone who is oppressed because they are not what cis white men think of as them. And by them, I mean the cis white men who are in the positions that are making these decisions for the rest of us. And I have nothing against cis white men. I love them. They're great. I've dated a few. They're awesome. But it doesn't mean I want them dictating what I can do with my body.
Right on.
Well, what about taking Black history out of the books in school? Now, will the ERA help stop that?
No, but what the ERA, so again, the ERA in and of itself won't stop that. But what it does say is, we're tired of this. Why are you rolling back our rights? Why are you taking information away? Why are you trying to make us into a country that's so regressive that we can't acknowledge and address our past so we can make a better future for ourselves? So the Equal Rights Amendment in and of itself won't do that, but the statement we make by saying we won't stand for this anymore, and saying, okay, this is the step. The same folks who are trying to ban books and to prevent critical race theory, even though critical race theory is not taught in elementary school, it's a graduate level course. But the premise is they don't want to teach white kids not to feel bad, to feel bad about themselves. My statement is everyone needs to understand where we came from so we don't go back there. Why is it that me as a Black kid growing up in Fairfax, Virginia, didn't learn about things like the Tulsa Massacre because my white peer might feel bad about it, but I didn't learn about that until I was in college, post-college. It's not okay. We need to teach our children what they need to be responsible adults in our society. And by denying them that, we're denying ourselves and our future in our country the ability to make critical decisions about who we are and what we want to see for our country going forward.
Right.
Absolutely. Can you explain, Elaine Rock is asking, can you explain why the National Archivist can't just reverse the ruling he made on the ERA when Trump was president?
Oh, President Trump. So just the backstory for those of you who don't know. So in 2020, when Virginia ratified the Equal Rights Amendment as the last state, all that was left was for the archivist to publish. We have members of Congress who were told by the archivist at the time that he would publish it when it was done. Instead, what happened is he sent the letter to the Justice Department under Trump, asking for clarity. And of course, what do you think the Justice Department under Trump would say? It's not valid. The time limit has expired. Because who are his supporters? Who are the people who are supporting him that benefit from the status quo of women and women and others who are discriminated against being in those positions? So the reason why right now we have a new archivist, she was just confirmed by the Senate earlier this year. She supports the Equal Rights Amendment, but she also recognizes that as the executive branch, she does in some ways reflect the president. And our president currently, God bless him, believes in the Constitution and supports the fact that he doesn't have a position based on the Constitution in anything to do with an amendment process. He respects the Constitution, God bless him. And so we don't have the Equal Rights Amendment at the moment, but that doesn't mean we can't have it. What he said and what she is subscribing to is that we want Congress to affirm the Equal Rights Amendment, because without that, if the archivist currently just goes ahead and publishes it, it's going to be challenged in court and it's going to make its way up to the Supreme Court without having the Senate and the House affirming it and having that support behind it and the support of all those people that are represented by those members of Congress. The Supreme Court's going to strike it down and we're done. We can't, starting a process over again it's not a non-starter. You can't even get anything passed in Congress, let alone trying to bring it to the states for ratification. There are too many houses that are too bipolar in their makeup. So it's not feasible to happen again. So the reason why, in my estimation, what I've heard is the archivist isn't going to publish because we don't need it, but we want the Congress to weigh in. The courts have said Congress should weigh in. The executive branch has said that Congress should weigh in. And then she goes to the Supreme Court. Mind you, it doesn't need to go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court actually has no authority over an amendment process. But because our country is in the place we are now, where our Supreme Court is so politically active, they will likely take it up. And if they take it up, it's not going to be in our interest if they don't have the support of Congress to say, no, it's right. If Congress has the ability to add an arbitrary time limit, they have the ability to remove it. And that's what we're asking them to do.
Great. Lindy Gravel had a hand up that I didn't see. Lindy, do you still have a question?
I have,
Okay, we'll get back to Lindy. There's a problem at the EEOC regarding Title VII too, isn't there?
I don't want to talk to that because I don't know enough about it. So I can take that back and get an answer for you, but I don't want to speak on something I'm not familiar with.
Great. Okay. And Diana Goodrow asked, women need to form coalitions in our communities to address the issues such as abortion rights or ERA, to bring like-minded organizations together in local communities based on the Beijing Platform for Action. We can form forums together. There are many, mostly women organizations that can organize locally, including all men who are on board with our issues. And that
I
sounds right,
co-sign on that.
Diana. It wasn't a question, but yeah.
You know, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Who is this?
Okay. We formed such an organization in Ventura, California, where I came from. I now live in Santa Rosa, California. But I really think it's an excellent model for what can be done all over the country by joining together with other organizations, other women's organizations and men's organizations that can come together in their local communities to fight for whatever we need to have addressed that raises its head locally. And I think that we speak at such a high level of broadly, too broadly, and I'm not very concerned that we don't go to the local level and try to work with other groups to create this individual community forum and have that forum support the legislation, support political action, to support abortion rights in their community, voter registration. I don't care what it is. If you look at the Beijing Platform for Action, and I was in Beijing for the Fourth World Conference for Women, I really think it's so important that we address it globally as well as locally. And I don't think us using that lens to look at all the issues that we need. I am 93 years old now, and I don't have a lot more time. And I really would like to see us get more active at the local level than we are. We're talking much too high up in the air, and we need to bring it down to the local. And that's my.
You are absolutely right. So my background is really in politics, and I can't tell you the number of people who don't understand and appreciate that more goes on in your local level, local political level, that affects your daily lives than anything that goes on in the national level. So if you're not paying attention to what's going on locally, you're missing it, because they're setting the agenda that then gets trickled up to your legislature, which trickles up to the Congress. So if you want to make change, local level is a way to do it. You have more impact and influence there, and that can set the stage. So yes, get involved locally. And for me, politics is the way to go. You can't just, voting is great, but as I said, politicians listen to two things: money and votes. Votes are awesome, but you need to mobilize us, but you got to mobilize your money, because if you don't mobilize the money to get the right people in places, it's not going to happen. Women aren't traditionally politically inclined to give money, but we got to change that. We give to our churches, we give to our houses of worship, we give to our local charities. But if you want to make real change in our society, unfortunately, you got to give politically too. Give to the candidate who actually is going to make the difference in your community, and organize for them. If you don't have money, it doesn't take a lot. For a local race, giving $50 can make the difference in a local race, right? But $50 on the presidential level is not going to do a darn thing, but you can make a difference. Yes, Diana.
I think in California, we try to do a great deal of that. I think we're pretty effective, but I'm concerned about the rest of the country.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's fair.
So do we have any other questions for?
Meryl has her hand up.
Meryl, you'll need to unmute yourself now. Because there you go.
There you are.
Thank you. Hi, what a pleasure to hear you and see you. You are such a dynamo. It's wonderful. But here's my question. Have you worked at all with the Feminist Majority, Ellie Smeal's group?
Love Ellie. Yes.
Yeah.
They're fantastic. So actually the webinar that Elaine was talking about earlier, Ellie Smeal was one of the other panelists. It was Ellie Smeal. It was Ting Ting Cheng from the ERA Log Project at Columbia University. Carolyn Maloney, who was our C4 board chair, but former Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney.
Yeah.
And so it was a great conversation, and from very different perspectives. So, you know, Ellie and I were talking from the advocate's perspective. Carolyn was giving her perspective as a former member of Congress, and Ting Ting was giving the legal perspective on that way. And if we can find the YouTube of that, I think it'd be very interesting for folks to listen to, because we're coming at this from all aspects of it. we're pushing for publication. We're pushing for Congress to work. We're pushing on the state level for acknowledgement and affirmation of the Equal Rights Amendment. And I can just say this, I love Ellie Smeal. I love working with her. I respect and appreciate everything she's done for this movement and the fact that she continues to bring more people with her. And if you ever go to an event where she's speaking, I always say, put her at the end. She's the best closer I've ever seen when it comes to talking about women's issues. She can shut down a house or burn it up, either way. I don't know, it depends on how you're looking at it. But Ellie's fantastic.
Yeah, she's something else. Thank you.
I'm looking for that link.
I have a quick question. Do you think, as I was listening to you about getting, I know for our chapter here in Sonoma County, we have been having a real struggle, trying to get people to attend. I mean, I'm really happy that we have as many people that have come out today, that on such short notice, they will come out for different speeches. But I'm wondering, do you think that women are kind of are pulling back, as your experience been that they're pulling back because what's happened with Roe versus Wade and all the different things that are going on right now, that people are kind of shy about coming out again? Now, if that's true, what suggestions do you have? How would you, what ideas do you have about inspiring people to get involved?
Oh, I think quite the opposite is happening. People are more fired up. So I think Trump winning in 2016 was a bump. I think the Dobbs decision was a wake-up call for a vast swath of the country. They just don't know how to get involved and engaged. And I think with an organization such as NOW that has such a legacy, it's about trying to connect with people where they are in ways that are helpful. So you mentioned that people come out when there's certain speakers. That's great. So when they come out when there's certain speakers, be like, oh, and we also have this thing next week where you can learn more about how you can engage. But Amy and I were talking about this before. Give people small things that they can do to be engaged with the organization so that they don't have to show up to every board meeting, but there are things that we do in the community that might attract them to do the things that you want to engage them around this. I've been working with members with NOW chapters for quite some time, and I know the big issue is bringing young people into it. And there are little things you can do, like having meetings in the evenings or on weekends, or doing them when they're not in school and when they're not at work, or if they're young mothers, like do things at times that work for them, or provide daycare at in-person meetings. Think about ways that you can bring people to the fold that meets them where they are, because they care about this issue. Everybody cares about this issue. Even if you don't have time for it, you want to do it. Many people want to do something. They just need a very easy way to engage, because our attention spans these days are so fleeting. And so you got to give someone something to do in like 2 minutes. If they can sign up in 2 minutes, less than that, they'll do it. But if it takes them longer than that to engage, they're not going to pay attention. So you just have to find ways to meet people where they are and ask them, this is something that's important. What would get you excited about doing something? What would you want to do? What's an action that you can do? Can you write a postcard? Can you call your senator? Can you, throw a house party or a salon and get people excited about it? Can you do a happy hour? So just trying to figure out ways in which people can feel like they're engaging without having too much of a commitment. Rebecca, you have your hand up. And then Celeste, you also, I see.
Hi, I was just wondering if Tamarina had a word or two about what California NOW is doing for the ERA. I was signing the petition the other day. And what's special here in California? Is there going to be a certain rally day, or is there some special thing that we can send out for the California effort?
Thank you. What we are doing is we are working on the coalition along with, I think, Carolyn Maloney. I think she's on that coalition. And Kathy Bunk is the one who's putting this whole thing together, which she provided a toolkit that a lot of the NOW chapters are using. And we've been sending it out. And basically that's the petition for people to sign the petition and forward it to their friends and family, because they have found through these meetings and how they're tracking this data through a platform, how it expands when people do that. So I've been talking to everyone about it, talking to individual chapters, talking to sending out messages. But we have to remember that, like, if you look at NOW members, we don't have, for whatever reason, California has the most NOW members of all to the states, but we don't have emails for all those people. So you have to look at different ways to reach the people that don't have emails, including like sending them postcards with a QR code so they knew to sign the petition, because I think that's part of it. Zakiya said about like that we have to get the people to know that people want to do this. So we're doing that effort, and we're going to continue it with more as we engage with different chapters as we move forward, because you are right that we are so close that it's going to take everyone's effort to do it. And doing this petition thing is such a simple thing that, I mean, anybody can do it, but you just have to be able to talk to all those people. So a lot of events that we're having and other groups are having, we are bringing those to whatever. Like I know that they're going to have the event on the 26th. They're bringing those petitions over there to make, well, actually they're doing it electronically to make it less than 2 seconds to be able to sign up, because that's like the key, that if we're all coming together because everybody does care, and we are, Elaine, you had asked earlier about people, whether they're engaged. A lot more people want to be engaged. A lot of people are calling. A lot of people want to start other chapters. I just got a call from somebody in Weed, California, who wants to start a chapter there. I don't know where it is, but I think it's up north. So it's like a very dynamic time, and I think we can all work together to make this happen, because I think you're right, we're so close.
And Karina, I put the petition link in the chat. So the petition link is for folks to sign. The petition basically says, we want Congress to affirm that the Equal Rights Amendment is valid and should be part of the Constitution. Former Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney and her students at Hunter College, she's now a professor there, created this campaign, and we're trying to get hundreds of thousands of signatures to compel members of Congress to do the right thing and to make the Equal Rights Amendment part of the Constitution. So sign number 4 ERA.org is the link for that. And Celeste, you had your hand up.
I have a question.
I did. Thank you so much for being here and bringing this really important information to our NOW chapter, and to some of us who pop into NOW when there's something super valuable for myself or others to show up. One of my biggest issues is time, and where do I put my energy, and where do I, do more of the work that I'm already doing. I do want you to know that we have some really powerful African-American women in this community. And I've been invited to work with some folks who are working for Natalie Rogers, who is the mayor of Santa Rosa, for her reelection. I'm currently working on a racial equity group to look at racial equity in the nonprofit and in the homeless community. And also working with a group of women called Impact 100 Redwood Circle, who give $100,000 to a worthy nonprofit. And that money, $100,000, went to an African-American woman 2 years ago. So work is being done, but what I really could benefit from is some links or some material to really kind of, in my time, be able to chew on this important amendment and the details of it, because I think, and I'm a fairly awoke person around knowing what's going on, but this is kind of something that has slipped through my crack, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say so as a poli-sci major in college, but I want to know more. I need to get it fast. I want to get it out to people that I'm connected with, big and small, in different circles, because this is how we make change in this country. My sociology professor said it's not going to be because people are going to want to do it because it's the right thing or their heart is open. It's because it is a legal matter, and it is something that we get done through the legal process. So thank you for all that you've done.
No, and thank you. I think it's important to acknowledge that you're not alone in not knowing much about this, and there's a reason for that. Right?
phone because I'm on.
The reason that you don't know much about it is because people don't want you to. I mean, there are folks out there who don't think the Equal Rights Amendment should be a thing because it's in their interest for you not to know about it being a thing. And we
Well,
are
I
small
want
but
to know.
mighty. No, but that's the thing. Like
Yeah.
my job as the ERA Coalition, and I put our link in the chat so you can learn more information. That's the most immediate thing I can share with you. My
Mhm.
job is to raise a public awareness about this. We need to have people talking about this, like they're talking about abortion, like they're talking about LGBTQ plus rights, because the Equal Rights Amendment addresses all of those. And so what we're doing is we're uplifting those issues as well, because we recognize that if we want people to understand and appreciate the Equal Rights Amendment and what it could do, we need to understand and appreciate the issues that people are facing and how the Equal Rights Amendment relates to that, so that we can bring people together to talk about it. So I just want to say you're in good company. Lots of people don't really know as much about this as I'd like for them to do that. You can visit our website, eracoalition.org. That's a great place to get started to learn more about it. And I want to say you're going to hear more about it anyway, because we're going to promote the hell out of it. Sorry for my language, but that's a great place to get started. Because the more you learn about it and just having conversations, I always think it's interesting when I talk to my teammates, and we have family members of our teammates, myself included, who don't know that we don't have an Equal Rights Amendment. I have young nieces and nephews, and I have to be like, the reason we need this is X, Y, and Z. And I have to share that with my nieces and nephews, because my nephews need to understand that they have a stake in this too. It's not just about my nieces. It's not just about their mom. It's not just about their future children if they have them. It's about them too. So first place to go is to start eracoalition.org. And what I may do, Amy, is send you some more follow-up information after this to answer the one question I didn't have an answer to, but I just took a quick note to say to send more information. But the coalition site is a great one. And really what you should focus on is, you said that it's a legal issue. Really, it's an economic issue. The reason why we don't have
it always is.
It is, but people don't think about it. They think about the social issues because those are the things that distract us. But what's really fundamental about the Equal Rights Amendment is it's about pay equity. It's about not being able to discriminate against someone so that they get to choose the direction of their life. If you keep someone from having an abortion, that means that they may have an unwanted pregnancy, and that limits their opportunity financially.
I get that.
And I'm saying it for everyone, not just for you. I get, you understand this. We understand this, but people need to hear it. And people don't hear that. What they hear is the Phyllis Schlafly kind of arguments. And let's be honest. Like, for a lot of women, the housemaker model never was a thing. It was never a reality for the vast majority of people, a vast majority of women in particular. But they wanted to. This is the pedestal that turned into a gilded cage for women, right? And we need to address that and acknowledge it. That was never real. That was someone's belief of what a woman should be like, but it really kept us limited. I'm not saying you can't do that. I have friends who went to college, went to grad school, and now they're stay-at-home moms, and they love it. But that shouldn't be the only case for them. They should have the opportunity if they want to do something different. But if they want to be a stay-at-home mom, go for it. But they should also be compensated legally. Social Security should recognize that work is labor.
Amen.
Right. The skills that they're doing there. Sorry, go ahead, Amy.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to just say Joyce has had her hand up for a while. So.
Okay. So it's an economic argument. Just remember that. Don't let them define the narrative.
And so is reparations, which seems to be really upfront and out here right now. And we're looking at that to see how we continue to move that forward. So I think that these important causes, they interrelate with each other.
They do. It's all intersectional. Joyce, I'm sorry I was on my soapbox. Go for it.
No, that's fine. We love the soapboxes. To follow up on Celeste's question and your earlier comment, Zakiya, the thing about simple, Celeste needs links. But I was inspired to think, we've got a Democratic breakfast coming up in this small rural Appalachian county of Virginia, and we are very few activists in a red county. But does the ERA, does your organization have things that we can order, like a stack of postcards, so that an event people can write and fill in and send? Is that one of the
We
ways?
do. And Joyce, where are you in Virginia? Because I'm in Virginia also. Where are you?
Okay, Grayson County,
Okay.
halfway between Blacksburg and Bristol.
Okay, fantastic. So I have one of my really close friends, my brother from another mother, is from Bristol. I've traveled Virginia on political campaigns, and my God, we have a beautiful state. So I would say if you're not connected with the NOW chapter in Virginia, they actually do a lot of this work. So as the coalition, we are the umbrella that all of these organizations come together on. So we have material, but we encourage local participation with the groups that are doing the work in your community. So I don't know if you worked with Lisa Sales, who's now the president of NOW. But I can give you their contact information, but they do postcards, they do letter writing campaigns, they do congressional action, they do state action. So yes, Virginia NOW is probably the best place for you to get plugged in.
Well,
Because
I think I'm 2 hours away from the closest League of Women Voters or NOW chapter.
But
I
given,
will check in with that. Yeah.
but given the nature of how our society has changed with COVID, I think that you'll find community without having to be in person with organizations. So I think there's a lot that you would be able to do to bring that to your local community rather than having to like go 2 hours. I get you. Virginia's huge. And you're in a very red part of Virginia, so I hear you.
Yeah. I would love to bomb Morgan Griffith's congressional office with pro ERA postcards.
Well, you should. So in Virginia, if we don't maintain the control of the House and the Senate, then the governor has said that he wants to rescind the Equal Rights Amendment. So we got to make sure Virginia stays true, because Terry McAuliffe messed us up when he decided he wanted to run for governor and pushing out 2 Black women in the process. That did not do well for Virginia. Not very happy with him. So
Can I interject a question?
Yes.
Thank you. One of the causes that's very near to my heart is carbon offsets for women who are non-reproductive as a climate strategy. And I'm convinced that women deserve the carbon offset more than single zeros who are men, just because it's mommy's babies and daddy's maybes. And when women sacrifice motherhood, it's a sacrifice. When men sacrifice parenthood, it's usually, almost always a choice. So the sacrifice of women to be non-mothers should entitle us to carbon offsets. They never gave us wages for housework in the 80s, and they're not giving us carbon offsets. How would ERA affect both of those issues? Wages for housework and carbon offsets for women who are single zeros.
So again, the Equal Rights Amendment in and of itself won't solve any issue, but what it would do is empower the legislature, the Congress, or the state legislature, to actually create laws that would do what we want it to do. And I honestly don't know enough about carbon offsets for individuals to be able to answer your question specifically for that. But when you're looking at pay for housework and it's domestic work, like those skills are transferable to anything. We have seen movement, or we have seen progress, and at least when you're looking at Social Security, about being able to recognize that that's labor, then you contribute to the labor force, and so you should be able to reap those benefits when you're later in life when you need to. But again, the Equal Rights Amendment isn't going to fix anything with a broad stroke, but what it does do, it empowers the legislature to make laws that can address those issues.
Well, thank you all for your questions. I promised Zakiya that she could go to bed by 10:30 or so, and it's on that at that time. So if you have other questions, please put them in the chat or send an email to info@now.org. info@nowsonoma.org, and we can pass them over to her.
Great. And thank you so much. This was fun. I love the opportunity to talk about this, and that, like I said, the Q&A portion is my favorite, because that's when you actually get answers to what you want to hear, and you don't just hear me spewing for 20 minutes. So thank you so much for inviting me. Had a great time. If you have any questions, comments, Amy and Elaine know how to get in touch with me. So thank you so much. And I'll let you guys get back to your meeting.
Can I just say one thing before you
Sure.
leave? I want to thank you so much for a wonderful, wonderful presentation. And I also want to encourage everybody here to go on the Women's Spaces website and let your friends know that there is an interview with Zakiya, that if they missed her, that there's a wonderful, wonderful interview that can really educate you. And also we interviewed Molly McGregor, who's the founder, one of the co-founders of the National Women's History Project. We interviewed her this morning and she talked this morning. Oh my God, yes, this morning we interviewed her and we talked all about the ERA, and I was amazed at how much I learned.